All right. Mic check. I'm good. So I'm Max Ceron. CWB Association Welding podcast. Today we have a really cool guest. Welding podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and as always, looking all over the country in North America for the best talent, best voices, and best stories I can find. Today, we have a wonderful lady who I have been running into all over the place for the last couple of years at different conferences and meetings because she is involved in seemingly every project out there. We have Jill Timushka coming to us from Calgary, just outside of Calgary today. Jill, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the chat. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I feel like I'm among professionals because you also have a podcast.
I do have a podcast. Do you do mine? I'll do yours.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We could do what we call a cross pod.
Yeah.
I'm totally down with that. And,
Okay.
I feel like I'm going to be graded now. Are you going to be like, no, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have said that.
You have way more experience than I. I think I have 20 podcasts. You have like 140 by now, 130 some last time I checked. Wow, you're the pro. You'll be judging me, trust me.
Well, let's just start at the start. All right. So you are just outside of Calgary right now. But is that your birthland? Where are your roots from?
I was born in Edmonton, and when I was 3, we moved to Medicine Hat, which I spent most of my life. I have lived up near Calgary for the last 10 years. My son and I'm a single mom, been a single mom for 18 years. My son is 19 now. He's still with me. So him and I moved up here 10 years ago. Yeah, we love it up here. We really, really love it up here. Medicine Hat was fine, but it was time to move on. There's a lot more to do here, and I love the mountains. I need to be closer to the mountains, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, I've never left. I've never lived anywhere other than Alberta.
So why Calgary over Edmonton?
There's more to do here, and it's closer to the mountains.
Oh, you're gonna get some people saying, no, what are you talking about?
I know, but I'm an Oilers fan. Just to make it even, I'm an Oilers fan. My dad was an Oilers fan, so was my son. So
Well,
there's that.
The Oilers Stadium is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I was there once. A friend of mine took me to an Oilers game once. I have
Yeah.
been to a few more games here, usually when the Oilers are playing.
So you are born and raised in the province of Alberta,
Yeah.
a province that is famously known for its trades and its trades programs. It's in many ways has been historically a leader in the trades and is one of the only provinces, if not the only province, where welding is a compulsory trade.
Mhm.
So, in your bio and in the research of yourself, you spoke about the trades being a big part of your family. So,
Yeah.
talk a little bit about how that influence was in your home growing up as a young woman.
Well, it's really, really funny. I grew up with welders all around me, and I never thought about becoming a welder until I was in my early 20s, which is going to date me now, but that's okay. So my dad's a welder, my grandpa's a welder, and my great grandfather was a blacksmith. I have a lot of uncles and cousins that are welders too. I am the first female in the family. So my mom is the oldest of 5 girls. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. There's lots of girls in my family, not very many boys. So when my mom was growing up, my grandpa always wanted one of his daughters to become a welder, and none of them did. So when my mom met my father, my my mom's dad was the welder, not my dad's dad. So it kind of hops over. So my grandpa taught my dad how to weld. And then I think it was the early 70s. I have his stuff on the wall over here, my plaques and stuff. I've got everything
Hmm.
on the wall. I've got the 4 generations on the wall over here now. It was the early 70s that my dad got his certification. Now, I didn't grow up with a welder in the house because when I was 5, my mom and dad split up. And they got back together, strangely enough, when I was 17. So my mom always tells the story that my dad took the garbage out and didn't come back for 12 years. So it's like a family joke, right? Anyway, so when I was 17, my dad was back in the house and whatever. I was moving out and I was doing my own thing. I was living my life and never really thought about that. I was a waitress at the time, right? I was working in the food and beverage industry, which is a respectful, industry. It's not as easy as people look. I think everybody should do a little time in the industry
Yeah,
just
I
so they
couldn't
know
handle
how
it.
hard it is.
I would fail in minutes.
It's hard, and people,
Hmm.
anyways, I won't get on that. But then I was looking for like a career, right? So I sat down with my mom and dad, and I thought mechanics was really cool. I'd love to fix up old vehicles. I used to go to the drag races and stuff, and I really would love to like fix up a drag, like go drag
Hmm.
racing and have the vehicle of, that I worked on myself. But all the mechanics told me I would hate it. I'd have busted knuckles. I'd swear a lot, which who says I don't? Um, Anyways, but mom and dad said, why not get into welding? So I was like, well, I can try it with my dad. My dad has a business, he could get me started. So I tried it and I loved it. I love the smell of 6010 burning. I still do to this day. It's like campfire to me. I wrote a
Hmm.
poem one time. Maybe I'll send it to you. I wrote a poem about how much I love the smell of 6010 as well. It's like
It's like
apple pie to some people.
it's like the fresh newspaper.
Oh, it's great. It's like I can smell 6010 from miles away. Somebody's welding. Somebody's welding. I can smell it. Right. Anyways, so I really loved it. And I got pushed into first year way earlier than I was ready for. So my marks were terrible, but I passed. I made it.
Hmm.
I got into the industry. I started working, and really that's my rundown of how I got in. But yeah, I still in Saskatchewan and in Alberta, I still have relatives that are welding. My dad passed away a couple of years ago. My grandpa never knew I ever became a welder. He passed away when I was 15. So, but you know what? I feel them.
Yeah,
Like they gave me a lot
it's
of help
funny.
along the
It's
way.
funny how you say you have your generations of welder. I have all my dad's certifications here. My dad was a boilermaker for his whole career, and we come from
Oh,
South America, where we're full of miners and people that work in the mining industry. So
okay.
we keep some of the same stuff, that history in our families, but
Mm.
there's some years there where I'm interested to know, you know, what your thoughts were, because you grew up knowing about the trades. That's
Yeah,
kind of like step one, because a lot of people say, why don't we have enough kids in the trades? Well, you don't know what you don't know. So if your
yeah,
dad was a banker and your great grandpa was an accountant and and there's not a single tradesperson in your family, which for decades was what society was trying to do, is create all these professionals. How would you ever even be around, even for a conversation about the trades? So
right.
you already had that barrier out of the way. It was something
Mhm.
that existed. But coming up through high school, what was it that you thought you wanted to be? Because from high school to
Yeah.
24, there's a break there, and you
Yes.
can't tell. There must have been a dream you had. You know.
Well, there was, what I knew for sure is I didn't like sitting in the classroom. I
Mm,
hated it. I hated sitting there and being forced to learn things that I would never use. And I don't promote, dropping out of school. I don't. Everybody needs their grade 12 in the very least. Um, I knew I didn't want to go to school for another 4 years, 5 years, anything like that. So I
yeah.
wanted to do something, and I like to work with my hands. And even from a small age, I was always fixing things. Right? I told you that
Hmm.
my dad and my mom split when I was 5. I was the one that fixed things around the house, even when I was young. Oh, we need to, something needs to be painted, get Jill to do it. I would try anyways, right? I put my own doll strollers together. I loved all that stuff. So I knew I needed to do something along those lines. I knew waitressing, and I did think about owning a bar at one point, but with all
Hmm.
the laws and stuff, the headaches, forget it.
It's a ton
Um,
of work.
it is a ton of work, and no thanks, no thanks. I don't know. I've always been kind of proud of finished products, or
Hmm.
projects, even projects. So to me, I kind of think I would have ended up in some sort. I probably would have been a mechanic, but I probably would have ended up in some sort of trade anyways. I
Yeah.
think it would have been harder for me to find that, right? Had I not
Yeah.
had the support of my family. And I mean, honestly, the trades were not offered to me when I was in high school. Sure, go to home ec, sure, go to, food studies, right? That's what we called it back then. Go
Hmm.
into, biology, which I hated. Um, who wants to dissect anything? Blah, right?
Except for my
But
steak, right?
yeah, well, I don't even eat meat, so no thanks. I'll dissect cucumbers and carrots and lettuce. I'm a good gardener. See, I could have got into greenhouse stuff. Um, yeah, I think I would have found something. I don't know if it would have been welding, but I so love welding. Had I been
Hmm.
able to take a course like they offer to women now, or anybody now, where you can try all those trades, I honestly think welding would have been my thing too. I do say it runs in my blood because of being the fourth generation, really.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I would have found my way, I think, somehow.
And then, as you decide with your dad, his company to get into welding, what kind of welding did he do? And was that the type of welding you wanted to do? Because welding is a vast spectrum. And even when you
Holy,
say 60-10, as soon as you say 60-10, you've already narrowed it down to
yeah,
Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Midwest Southern US, because
yeah,
these are the only places running F3 routes. Everyone else is off 60-10 20
yeah.
years ago. But
I know.
where there's certain geographies where that 60-10 life is. So,
I I I couldn't imagine welding an open root pipe with anything but 6010. I have done it with MIG. I've done it rolling, obviously
yeah, yeah.
spooling. We call it spooling with MIG, and to me, it's just not the same. But anyways, to me, I wanted to do well. See, there was a lot of different variety in my family too.
Mhm.
My grandpa was an inventor, and he did a lot of really cool things, but it was all stick welding back then. So that is, you know, automatically it goes to that. But he also did a lot of artwork. He did
Okay.
those beautiful logs. Every one of his daughters has a log of a different kind. One has a lamp, one has an ashtray, one has, a bunch of stuff. So I am luckily getting all of those now, kind of collecting them because I'm the welder, the youngest. I'm the youngest welder and I'm not young. But anyways, but I don't know, I just really was interested in what my dad did. He had a rig. I really liked the thought of having a rig myself. Strangely enough, he gave me his old rig, which was a 71 Ford F350 with a deck, and I put a 71 Lincoln on the back. 71 might be my year. Anyways, so I never did run it though. Life had a different plan for me because I ended up being a single mom, right? You can't
Mhm.
do pipeline when you're a single mom. I just always liked, I don't know, working at a plant site was interesting to me. So I got into fab shops and I did stuff like that. Not to say that, being an iron worker wouldn't be really cool or a boilermaker wouldn't be really cool, because we all weld. It's just different welds, right? Structural
Yep.
is very interesting too. And I've had the structural ticket before. And you have to have it now if you're going to do anything structural, right? As we know. I don't know. There was just something about the plant sites and fab
Yeah.
shops. Those are my two favorite things. Plant site shutdowns is my ultimate favorite because it's chaos for about 2 or 3 weeks, 12-hour shifts, you're exhausted, but there's lots of people and there's lots of things going on. Oh my God, something over there has happened. We opened up a vessel, there's worse stuff in it where we've got to, renew this whole string of pipe because it's been eaten out by acid. Okay, we
Yeah.
all got to get on it and work, overtime. I love that. I love throw chaos at me. I do my best when I'm throwing that. It's
Well,
strange.
it's so interesting because I cut my teeth working for a maintenance shop for the mill. So I was doing shutdowns, at least one week a month we'd do a shutdown, like a mini shutdowns, and then once a year you'd do your 2 or 3 week turnaround, or if they didn't, I'd go hit up the ironworkers and go do a mine shutdown because that was some easy cash, that you could go out there.
Yeah.
I always had my stainless ticket, so with my stainless, there's a lot you can do.
Yes.
But when I got divorced and became a single dad with 2 kids, I had to stop
Hey.
doing all
Mhm.
that stuff
Yes. Yes.
because and that's when I decided to, because I already at that point had my red seal in welding, and I decided to become a fabricator. And I wasn't sure if I would like the transition going to a shop and working, but an old mentor of mine from way back ended up being a foreman for a new division of a company that was just getting into a new product. And he's like, "Hey, we needed someone that I know can fabricate, run a crew. Do you want to
Yes.
come work over here?" And I thought, well, this is going to be my chance to kind of get into lead hand, kind of position for a kind of a startup. And I got my first start into a real fab shop where we're just building, and I'm like designing jigs and worrying about flow of materials and how to structure the shop layout and machinery and all that stuff. And I fell in love with it. And
Yeah.
I would still pick up shutdowns here and there just for like, because it was like, you know what, I'm gonna go take 2 weeks holidays and go up to mine, because there is something oddly fascinating about that. Like, I mean, you go on a 2 or 3 week shutdown, you run into one or two people but you work with about 100, and you become friends with everyone by the end of the
Yes.
third week, and
Yeah.
you're like, you're like best friends forever. Like
I know you have that connection, and nobody can take that away from you.
no.
And I love that, and the chaos. The
Yeah,
chaos
yeah.
is so fun, and that's another thing I love about being in the trades. I just told you my family is filled with women. My mom has
Hmm.
sisters. I only have sisters. I mean, we do. My mom got married, obviously, to my dad, and I have uncles, and I do have a couple too, male cousins. But now I have all these brothers, right? All my trades
Hmm.
brothers, and it's
Yeah.
awesome because we give each other such a hard time. Probably less damaging than growing up with them. I don't have scars from them usually, unless they burn me or something. But it's so much fun. I have so many brothers right now, and we stay in touch, and it's all cool and fun.
Hmm.
But the shutdown life is really cool because then you do go to the next shutdown and you see, hey, weren't you at that other shutdown? And oh my God, it's been 3 years since I saw you at that shutdown, down in Medicine Hat or whatever. It's so much fun. I love it. I just worked a shutdown last year. I have
Still,
been,
oh man,
yeah. I've been in the office job or teaching or whatever for the last like say 6 years. But yeah, I did a shutdown down there. It's the Canadian fertilizer plant. I was there even before I was a B pressure welder. First time I think I was there was a journey person, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, and my dad's worked there. My son's father works there. My sister even did
wow.
some time. She's a nurse. She filled in for the nurse when she was on holidays. Like my whole family has spent time there, it seems. My son's half brother is a welder there now too. So it's just like I had to go. And I got to be a foreman down there too this time. So it was like the best. It was hot though. I think it was like 40 degrees most of the time I was there. It was either like
The
minus 10
last
or 40.
the last shutdown I did, it's gotta be, oh geez, 8 years ago. I'm 47, so it would have been like right around 40 years old. And I thought I was gonna die. Like, I mean, granted, it was with the iron workers. I used to do shutdowns with the pipe fitters when I had my pressure tickets, but they've all expired. So I went and did a shutdown with the iron workers, and boy, those iron workers are a tough breed, man. So like those 2 weeks, that first week, I didn't think my legs would ever work again because we were doing repairs on the main shaft for one of the mines. So there's no elevator. So you're doing like 100 floors up and down with gear and cables and you're watching these 20-year-olds run up and down, and I'm 40-year-old, my fat trying to. I
Well,
came.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I lost a lot of weight when I was there. I'm not saying it. And 12-hour shifts out in the back 40 in the heat. Yeah, you just
Hmm.
sweat it out. You have no choice. When I was at the shutdown, we were working on the high line. We were installing a new high line, a new pipe. Anyways, I can't talk too much about it. Sworn to secrecy, the plant site rule, right?
Hmm.
But anyways,
Hmm.
we were up in the high line, and I got to work with another female welder. I knew her from my hall, but I'd never worked with her before. Man, we had so much fun, so much fun. But I'm telling you, laying on an electrical tray to do part of the weld and then, doing the other
Hmm.
part over here and then going round and round because root, fill, and cap, right?
Yeah,
It was challenging. Some might not have been pretty as they were 20 years ago, but
they're in
no
there.
repair, no
Yeah.
repairs. So, and it's X-ray too. It's X-ray
Yeah.
stuff, right? A 5 or 10%. But it was. But then again, you're crawling up the structure. You're doing your welds. You're like basically doing yoga all over, right? And then go down for coffee, come back up. Yeah. But it was fun. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Or sometimes when you're in the most uncomfortable spot, then you just put your head down for a second, and you just give yourself like a 10-second break. It feels so good, and then you're
Yeah.
like, okay, let's get back at this.
Yeah. To me, it's more like a 10-second pep talk. You can
Yeah.
do this. Ignore the pain in your neck or wherever the pain is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just don't hold your breath, breathe through it, and get her done. One more rod and you're good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. A little pep talk, right?
So you got into the trades at around 24. Your dad's got a rig, so he's out there working. I would assume shutdowns, chasing work, as most rig welders do. You know, you said you didn't follow in that path. So, what was it that you got into for apprenticeship? Where did you do your apprenticeship and how did you get started there?
I started my apprenticeship at a place called Wiki Waste Equipment in Medicine Hat. I was a little non-union shop. It's a good place to start. We were building, the BFI containers. They did have,
Hmm.
garbage trucks and stuff too. They were getting into street sweepers before they shut down. They stayed another 5 years after I left. Yeah, I spent some time there. I think probably 8 months, a year. Oh, it's so long ago. I spent some time there. I learned a lot, met a lot of really cool people. And then I went to school. And then after school, I decided to go somewhere else, right? I did a farm shop. I did, I have done plant sites and stuff. Um, and little shops here and there. But once I joined the union, I stuck with the union and just went where the work was, right? Dad did pipeline. Dad did a lot of pipeline. So most of my family's done pipeline. That's about the only thing I haven't done. I mean, within the piping,
Yeah.
within UA, I haven't done pipeline. Just because when I was, 32, I had my son, right? So then it was, I mean, there are a lot of years there where I got to have some fun and be single and explore and do a little bit of travel. But then I was grounded, as you know, right? Once you
Yeah.
have a kid, that's it. Like you're staying close to home,
Well, and there's
and that's
so
that.
much pipe work that happens in a shop anyways, right? Like all the
Yeah,
junctions and in reality, everyone thinks that everything gets done out in the field, but really the least amount possible gets done in the field
yeah,
because it's hard to do. It's so much better to get her done in a shop and ship it out and then just do the junctions and the joints, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all the tie-ins. Well, and it's faster to do MIG roots and stuff too in a shop because you have
mhm,
that machine that spins it and you can pump them out pretty good in a shop,
yeah.
right?
Although these
There's some,
new technologies like the like these open root like STT, RMD, all these new root pipe root welding machines, all position, short circuit, MIG, they just slide in, it does all the technology for you. I've been shocked at how good those machines are. Like they say that they're gonna do this thing, you kind of don't believe it, but then they
yeah.
do.
Yeah, I've never had to do the position STT RMD that you're talking about.
Hmm.
I've done STT but roll,
Ah,
right?
yeah.
So the STT was like kind of foreign to me because I'm old school. Give me
Hmm.
60-10 any day. MIG, not loving it so much, but I'll do it, right? So yeah, I kind of had to force myself to like the STT. And now I'm like, oh my, look at all these new technologies and all this new stuff. I'm well in metal core, right? Flux
Yeah,
core. Metal core we used to call mega fill because it's so fast. It's like,
yeah.
MIG on steroids, right? Yeah, there's a lot of processes that are really, really cool, but MIG in position, I've yet to actually see. I'd love to see it though.
Yeah, no, it goes in nice. Goes in nice.
Does it?
It gets too hot though. You gotta really slow down. Like you can't just like you think, oh, it's MIG. I'll just start at the bottom and get like 6 to 12, get her done. But there's so
Yeah.
much wire coming in, so much amps, right? Like you can only go about 4 or 5 inches, and you got to stop and let her cool because
So
like she starts to get real hot. The deposition rate just piles in there. So
is it downhand or up?
you're going up.
Really with MIG?
Hmm.
I gotta check that out. Hey, I'm going on a shutdown. Quit
Yeah.
my job. I'm going.
So you're in with the Hall now, and in Alberta, the UA is very strong because obviously the energy boom, and you would have been around for the energy boom. Probably caught towards the mid tail end of it before it
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
leveled
yeah.
out, and there would have been so much rod being burnt across Alberta. You know, did you really see yourself only as a pipe welder? Do you see yourself still as a pipe welder? Is that the niche that you live in?
I don't know. Yeah, I have to say, yeah. Uh, I'm always interested in trying other things.
Hmm.
Because I was an instructor, I was teaching the CW, like the structural. I'm old school. I call it the structural tests, right?
Yeah.
The CWB stuff, just because we wanted to get them employable, right? And that's a really good head start for them. So I got really involved in that kind of like practicing for testing. Obviously, I'm not an examiner, but yeah, I don't know if I could do structural or anything else. I have done a little bit of vessel work, right?
Yeah.
But and I really thought that was really interesting too. But yeah, I think pipe's my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And pipe's different. Like a lot of people say, pipe test, plate test. They're one's harder, one's easier. And it's really they got their own things. They got
yeah,
their own. I see just as many people fail a structural test as I see people fail a pressure test, and it's not skill. There's different tactics. There's different advantages and
yeah,
disadvantages to each one. And you say tanks. Well, tanks is a whole other world. Like I mean, API 650 welds, and I would say 90% of the issue with building tanks isn't even the welding; it's the fit up.
yeah.
Doing the courses properly and the seams and making sure the thing stays round, which is not that easy. Like,
Well, and a lot of people don't realize too, like even when I was welding like garbage cans, if they were a different style of garbage can, because they're square and there's a weld that goes all the way around them, if you didn't stagger your welds and hop around, that thing would distort and be crazy, right? You don't, it's
Mm-hmm.
not square anymore. So you really do have to think about stuff like that. And to me, that's cool.
That's
Because if
fun.
you
Yeah.
forget about that, then you're buggered, right? And then what are you going to do to fix it? How about just think about it before you start, have a strategy and stick with it, right?
Yeah. Or
I like
maybe
that
ask
kind of stuff.
ask one of the old hands if there's any tips and tricks, because guaranteed someone's already made that mistake before you.
Yes. And now I feel like I am the old hand,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
became, I remember when I was like the youngest on site, I was in my 20s and I was like treated like the daughter of everybody's daughter or sister. And then I was just the sister for a while, right? Or older sister perhaps. And now I seem to become the mom. Hey, Jill, do you have band-aids? Hey, Jill,
Mm-hmm.
guess what how can I work this out with my girlfriend? Or hey, my kid did this and he's not feeling well. I'm like,
Why would I know? Yeah.
I'm just a welder. Let me do my weld. I don't mind. I don't mind. It just was
Well,
kind
it's
of a
that
funny thing.
mentorship, which we're gonna
Yeah.
get to, because that's a big part of where you are now. This,
Yeah.
I guess, we know where we are, where the spectrum we live in. But
Yeah.
I had the same conversation just this morning with some people, because now the job that I have, I get a lot of random emails, calls, texts, Instagram messages, and you would think it would be, sometimes really high level stuff, but it can be as much as someone being like, "Hey, this tank I'm working on keeps cracking. What rod should I use?" Just simple questions like that. And you know what? I love answering them.
Yeah.
I love being like, okay, you know what? Grind it out, warm it up a little bit, try to find something that's a little, you know, s- more stretch to it, heat it up a little bit, and just go through a process. And all that stuff you can figure out kind of by accident or by mistake throughout your career.
Yeah.
It's like you wish you could just put it in a book and just let everyone have access to it, you
Exactly.
know?
Exactly. And you know what I really like to do when there's apprentices around that are asking me questions, which I have been out of it for like 6 or 7 years, except for that one shutdown I did last year. I like to ask them what they think the reason is and what they
Hmm.
think they should do to correct it and why. Like, don't not put them on the spot. Just say,
Yeah.
well, why do you think that happened? Do you think you're using like, did you put enough preheat in that? Is that why it cracked? And did you check the procedure? Because everything has a procedure now. What did the
Everything,
procedure
yeah.
say? Are you using too high of a rod size? Because I know a lot of the hot shots come in there and they want to put a root in with 732 or like what some giant like let's put a 1/4 inch in. Let's use a 1/4 inch rod and then I only have to do 2 passes. It's like, what? What are you doing, right?
180 amps, pile it in there, yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes even, like the hot pass. Sometimes I've had that happen to me where the boss is like, we need you to go faster." And I'm like, "You know what? I understand faster. I understand the inch count in a day. But if I put a fatter rod, like a wider rod or a fatter pass on my hot pass, my root's gonna droop, right? My
Hmm.
root's gonna be too heavy." That's what happened. "Oh, why is your root too heavy? Why do you have to like thin it back?" Right? Well, too
Yeah.
hot, like, but I like to have other people figure out why that's happening, right? Like, what would you do to correct this? And let's have a discussion about it, because I like to train them to start thinking about that,
The
right?
problem
Figure it
solving,
out on
yeah.
your own. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do that with my kid all the time. "Well, why do you think you're in trouble, young man?"
He's probably like, "Oh, not this
It's
again."
like, "Oh man, come on, mom. I just didn't wash the dishes. Leave me alone."
All right, well, you know what? This is a great time to take a break,
Okay.
because now
Yeah.
we're gonna go to our sponsors, and when we get back, I'd really like to get into, where your career led into, because we got you out there, we got you welding, you're working in the shops, but now you're sitting at a desk. So something happened, right? Something happened.
Something
So
happened.
don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here with Jill Timushka here on the CWB Association podcast.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we are back
And we
here. Yeah, CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and we're here with Jill, who has worked for the UA for a large part of her career, but now works for CBTU.
Yes.
Talk to me about what you do now, and then we'll try to connect the dots between then and now.
Oh wow, it's been such a journey, man. I'd write a book, but nobody would believe it. So CBTU is Canada's Building Trades Unions. I work for Apprenticeship Services right now, so my position is a temporary position. I've been doing this since September, and the project ends at the end of March in 2024. So what we do is we offer the apprenticeship grants, which I don't know if anybody has heard about that. There are some competitors that are offering the same grant. We have we are the only one that offers it to unionized contractors, right? So we work with our affiliated unions, and it's across the country. It's a national program. So my position is regional coordinator. I look after Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. I also work with a diversity liaison who works obviously in the diversity side, but we both reach out to the contractors. Because I'm heavily involved in union, I'm the one that reaches out to the unions themselves and talks to the business managers and dispatch and kind of creates that relationship, which of course is very easy to do because I love the industry, right? I might not know all the trades, but I have a pretty good understanding of how unions work. I've been in the union for a really long time, and I love the brotherhood, sisterhood, and how things just work and flow. So we have a goal, right, of how many contractors or apprentices really we want to bring in. The whole goal of the program is to bring more people into the trades. So the grant is for new first-year apprentices in Red Seal trades. Each contractor can apply for 2 new first-year apprentices per fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends at the end of March. So our second fiscal year just began April 1st of 2023. So I spend a lot of time calling these contractors, reaching out to them. If there's an issue with their application, then I call them and say, hey, maybe we need an AIT number that we don't have yet, which is their apprenticeship number. It's just we reach out, and it's really good connections. I've talked to so many people. It's really good to connect, and that I'm passionate about. I'm also passionate about bringing people into the trades, right? Which I also do on the side, which is a whole different conversation. But that's what I do for a living right now. Before this job, I was working a shutdown. So
yeah, well, it's that's an amazing program. It's basically $5,000 for a first year apprentice, and $10,000 if you're part of a designated group, which could be a newcomer, person of color, immigrant, or indigenous. I believe. I think there's a few in there.
Women in the trades, indigenous, newcomers, LGBTQ2 plus, or anybody underrepresented.
Yeah. So I mean, this is fantastic. You said there's a number of agencies working with them. Well, at the CWB, we have to work with all of them. So we're working with many of the same agencies because we don't technically recruit. We don't hire, we don't fire, we don't recruit. We just support, right? So we just are constantly trying to direct people to be like, oh, you're in a union, you need to go here. You're non-union, you go here. But everyone's got to get in. Everyone's got to get in on this because when the feds want to give money away, you take it.
Exactly. And part of my pitch is I say, you're looking at up to $20,000 for 2 new first-year apprentices per fiscal year. So when we were in the first fiscal year, I was saying, you can get $20,000 now, and then after April 1st, 20,000 more. There are some stipulations, of course. You have to be under 500 employees at the time that you apply. So there are some contractors that are right around 500 or over 500 in the busy time, so they have to wait until they're slower. It's and our program offers courses for the apprentices. They have to take 2 courses, which are Introduction to Mentorship for Apprentices and Introduction to Diversity and Inclusion, in order for them to, the contractor to qualify for the program to be approved. But the apprentice also gets sort of what I call a membership with Skill Plan, the course providers, which Skill Plan, if you know anything about Skill Plan, they're fantastic. And this apprentice can take other courses that will benefit them in their apprenticeship, for the next 3, 4, or 5 years, however long their apprenticeship is. So, and that is like, there's mental health in there, there's money matters, there's, help with math, there's help with, examination anxiety. There's all kinds of courses that you can take in there. So of course, I think our apprenticeship, grants are the best. And I'm not just saying that. And it's a very simple application for us. But anyways, little plug for the company there.
But you do have an advantage, is that you're catering to the unions. because the unions already have an established mentorship program. Whereas outside of the unions, the same people that are trying to work with this apprenticeship, grants, have to supply that mentorship externally because it's not built into private industry necessarily. I mean, there's very few private companies in Canada that actively have a mentorship program in their company. And then they wonder why they don't have the retention. Well, mentorship and clear pathways are a massive, massive selling point to keeping good talent.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and with our program too, we do allow the contractors to take the courses as well. We can send them. It's a different link. We go through a different way, but yeah, they can take the courses too, which are not for the mentee, they're for the mentor, right? Because obviously the apprentice is going to be the mentee, right? In our case. But I think it's fantastic for both to take the program. So we can't assume that everybody's a good mentor, but if they have the course under their belt, it might kind of like switch them up a little bit, right?
So,
Yeah.
this, at CBTU, this is now working with all unions or any and all unions. So,
All the affiliated unions, the
okay.
affiliated building trades union,
So
right?
which
Yeah,
are
it's just
those?
building trades. Oh man, I'm on the spot now. Well, I actually have a little cheat sheet here. Good thing you asked me that. So I've got bricklayers, heat and frost, electricians, of course UA, right? The operators, so the OEs, the painters, iron workers, Liuna, cement masons, sheet metal, teamsters, and UA. Now, not all of our unions. I mean, yeah, did I miss any? I'm sorry if I missed any. Those are just what I have on my sheet here. There are some, like Boilermakers are members of the CBTU, but they're not members necessarily of the provincial chapters, right? So like in my province, Building Trades of Alberta, they're not members of the Building Trades of Alberta, but they are members of the CBTU, so the national. So they are part of our program. We do reach out to them. And then we've got like unions like the Teamsters that don't really have a red seal trade. And then we have like some are complicated where like Liuna doesn't really have a first year apprentice. They're members of
Yeah.
ours. So there's wins and there's losses throughout. And it's the federal government who decided which trades are going to be covered. And there is the trade of heavy, I think it's called heavy equipment technician now. Heavy duty mechanic is what we generally used to call it,
Yep.
or I still do. That was missed, and that should have been included in this because the whole point of the program is to fill the skilled trades worker shortage. Yeah, the gaps, right? And heavy equipment technician is huge. There's a major cry for people in that trade, right? So for that to be missed, maybe if they do continue the program on after the end of March 2024, hopefully that we can bring that trade in, right? So
I wonder if that was a miss, thinking that they're the same thing as a millwright, because I hear that often they get lumped into the same group and they are not the same job.
no. It's like calling millwrights and machinists the same.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
No, and don't ever call a pipe fitter a plumber either. Woo! Right? There's some that just oof, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're all out there trying to make a buck, but it is true. Now, you said this is a temp gig that you came into this after your last shutdown here. Now, why? Why did you look at this? I'm sure you could have gone back to the hall as a trainer or some other support role at the hall. What were you looking for?
What got me was several things. I'm helping apprentices get into the trade. And it's not just my trades at my UA hall, which I'm passionate about alone, but it's all the trades that are affiliated with the CBTU. It's all the building trades, right? And that to me is a passion for sure, because I speak as much as I can to anybody that will listen that, about why are you not considering a career in the trades? I don't care what trade it is. I always brag about welders, of course, the most, because we're the only ones that are both cool and hot at the same time, hot and cool at the same time, right? But any of the trades. Also, I like to work on the national levels. I did a national position before, and I really, really enjoyed it. Now, this is a national project, and I have a region, right? Like I said, Alberta, Saskatchewan manages my region. So I really like that. And I don't know, I really like that kind of team with the same goal mentality, right? We're all looking out for doing the same thing. And I'm telling you, apprenticeship across the country is so different. Sometimes I
Oh,
help
I
out the
know.
Ontario team, and it's like somebody asks me a question about apprenticeship, and I'm like, you know what? Can I refer you to my colleague because your apprenticeship is a whole. I mean, even welders
Yeah.
in Ontario is very different than welders in Alberta. You're not allowed really to weld in Alberta unless you're in an apprenticeship or you have a journeyman certification, journey person, right? So yeah, it's different. I that was my passion. It was the team thing, it was the national, and it was helping bring more people into the trade.
Well, I totally understand the national scope because, you know, that was I love teaching. So I love teaching at the college. Teaching students was one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. But when I had the opportunity to start working on national programming, that was like, okay, you know what? I want to feel like I can make a difference. And it's one thing to make a difference to a student, which I appreciate and I love, but it's another thing to kind of like open doors for a vast number of people to
Yeah.
try to actually like, because I was one of those people that I used to like complain, like the system, it sucks or this sucks. It's like, no, put your money where
Yeah.
your mouth is. Like if you have an
Yep.
opportunity to fix the system, we'll get up there and do it then. Like
Yep. Hmm. Absolutely, I agree. I agree, and yeah, I've always said if you're going to complain about something, it's just a waste of your breath unless you're going to suggest a solution.
hmm
So be a part of the solution, right? Absolutely. But if we see issues, we do need to step up, especially us that have been in the industry a really long time. And we've seen the issues repetitively. It's not just a one
yeah,
case or a one location issue, which I can talk about, later on more about childcare. When you work in the trades, childcare is a huge, huge issue. And before I die, I plan to like make some change somewhere along the line, which we are doing with the Together committee. But I was even starting the conversations with my own little business there,
hmm
um, which I don't really do much with my business, which, that might change. You never know.
well,
I have
let's let
plans.
let's talk about that now because that is something that interests me. So I was a single dad. Um, thank God I had, a brother. My family, my sister and my parents moved to Vancouver when I was young. They left me behind basically, and so when I had my kids, I didn't have any family support, but I do have like a half brother who lives in town. So I would work nights. So I basically had to work nights on purpose for years so that we would just switch. I would drop the kids off, in the evening. He'd come to my place and then I'd come pick him up from his. And it was this convoluted thing because there's no daycares in the evenings and they go to school during the day. So, like, I mean, luckily I got divorced when the kids were in school age, but it was a big issue. So it's been high on my mind for a long time. And
Mhm.
working for the association now, or running the association, I get to basically look at what we can offer membership, as the unions do too. Basically, I'm trying to run this association. It's basically a free union for welders. So when I look at childcare, that's a big nut to tackle because how do you do that? You can't guarantee spots, number 1. Like that's
No,
outside of my control. That is
right.
based on provincial governments, how many spots
Yeah.
there is, the number of people, is there credits? Is there a tax rebate? Is there what can be done? And I would love to hear your thoughts on how you
It's
approach that.
through all my years of having to deal with it, um, because my son was 10 months old when we were out on our own. Um, and his
So that's
father is out.
yeah,
Yeah, that's really young. That's
that's
like
tough. Yeah.
daycare. That's
Yeah.
daycare, and then of course all the years, right? And his dad would help out if I had to work weekends. We had a great relationship. I was all good there. So if I wanted to make up some of the time I missed and work a Saturday, he was with his dad and it was all fantastic. But when you're a single parent, even when you're not, even when you're both two working parents, how do you juggle this childcare stuff? Because a lot of our shifts, and it's not just our industry, it's medical industry, it's a
hmm
lot of industries where your shift starts at 6 in the morning
Yeah,
or
you're on
five
the
in the
road at
morning or 7 in the
4:30.
morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and childcare doesn't open that early. Or sometimes you have to work a 10-hour shift. And I mean, I don't want to leave my son, or I don't think anybody should be leaving their kid in daycare for 13 hours a day. That's a really tough day. If it's the odd time, well, it is what it is.
Mm.
Um, to me, it's a very simple fix. And I think the government needs to step in, whether it's federal or provincial. Get them to start opening up earlier and getting them to start like staying open later. Do a night shift and do weekends. It's really
Yeah.
not that hard of a fix. But why would they do it if at first it's not well received? They're going to lose money because they're paying people to be there early. Maybe the kids aren't there. The government should step in and put in incentive programs so that they can come early.
Mhm.
They can hire people.
Well, and they
that
should
are
pay them
available.
more because they don't get paid very
Yeah,
much.
and pay them
Yeah.
more. And I'm on board for that too. The
Mhm.
night shift, it could be like a big sleepover party. I don't know. I'm not a daycare person. All the power to them because I could never do that. I have one kid and that's enough. I don't want 15 kids in my house. Forget it. But weekends, why not? Why not make a weekend available, right? Why not? Why not do a Saturday
Or like
and
a
a Sunday
camp.
shift?
It's almost like a
Yeah,
camp, like they go to the lake
yeah,
canoeing or something.
yeah,
But I mean, there's costs there, there's money there. But let me tell you, most of the people that are in the trades, the money's not the problem. It's the organizing and the
no,
time and the
yeah,
place. You know,
it is.
um,
Yeah,
one of the thoughts I had, and this is when I was working at a big company here in town, when we went through a spurt where we hired a whole bunch of Somalians and people from Eastern Africa, and they were all Muslim, and they were either Islamic or Muslim faith. And one day, one of the non-Muslim employees came up to me to complain and say, why do these people keep disappearing 3 times a day for 15
yeah,
minutes. And so I
yeah.
didn't know. I was ignorant, so the best way to cure ignorance is to ask. So
Yep,
I went over and I
yep,
asked one of the fellas and I said, "What's going on? I heard you guys are stepping away, every, 2 or 3 times a day." And he's like, "Well, we got to pray. It's part of our religion. We have to pray."
yep,
And I'm like, "Well, where do you go?" It's like,
right,
"Well, we have these mats that we roll out and we have to do it
yeah,
for X amount of time, X number of days." I'm like, "Well, where you've been doing it?" It's like, "Well, we've been doing it in the bathroom because we don't want to like inconvenience everyone." And I immediately felt terrible. I'm
yeah,
like, that's not fair. Number one, we are a company that recruited you. We brought hundreds of people from your part of the world. And so the onus is on me as your foreman now to accommodate. So we took an old break room that wasn't even being used, it was used for storage, and we made it a prayer room. Okay, so now this is your room,
perfect.
this is your prayer room. And
Yeah,
instead of the second coffee break, which is 15 minutes, we'll get rid of that second coffee break. You work through it, but now you get 3 5-minute breaks throughout the day to go pray.
yeah,
Deal. Everyone's happy.
yeah, yeah,
Right? Like this
yeah.
is not rocket science. This is just me
Exactly.
not making people be like, "Oh, you need to conform to our way." No, that's dumb.
No,
That's not right.
no,
So
right.
when I look at childcare, I've thought about this, but this is obviously something that would only work for large companies. On-site childcare, where the company itself opens up a childcare facility,
Mhm.
so you got your kids technically at work with you. They're
Yeah,
right there around the corner. And most large welding shops are not in town. They're a little bit out of town. Usually,
mhm,
it's not a bus place. Usually most places you can't take a bus to. So I've thought like, what if these companies, I bet if the federal government could give some grants and say, look, you build a, 60-person childcare facility on site for your employees, um, we'll help with whatever monies or whatever it works. Comes maybe directly off your check. You don't even have to pay for it.
yeah.
It's I've thought about this and I think that that would be
Mhm,
an awesome thing to offer, but it only works
mhm.
for a certain size of company. You
Yeah, yeah, and I'm going to play devil's advocate because with
mhm,
Build Together, we did put a thing together, and I'm gonna tell you about that in a second. Build Together kind of broke into a little subcommittee, and we threw around these ideas, and that of course came up.
mhm.
But so devil's advocate, um, maybe I'm speaking from experience. My son hates it when I talk about him, but not every child can go into just any childcare facility.
Right, right.
Some need,
They don't all fit.
different, better education, quieter places, or maybe more stimulating places, or
Mhm.
like you do have to find the right fit for your child. So that would,
Accommodations, yeah.
yeah, that might work for a lot of children, but it might not work for all children, right? That's And you don't want, if it's a dangerous site like a plant site, you really don't want them that close
No,
in case
no,
something
like
happens, right? So
explosions and gases
yeah,
or,
let's have them a block or two away. But that is another idea. So with Build Together, this subcommittee that we put together, and I think it's about a year and a half ago we started the project. It's completed. We have a website, we have brochures, we have cards we hand out, and we pitch industry, but we pitch mostly union because we want to start making change for the signatory contractors to perhaps maybe agree to work it into the work agreement, right?
Hmm.
Where I mean, okay, so it's called Supporting Working Parents. So the website is supportingworkingparents.com, or is it .ca? Sorry, I have a brochure right over there I can grab. I think it's actually .ca. So we have options. We have a whole list of options that are there. Getting government to support the idea of opening like I said earlier,
Hmm.
opening earlier, staying up later, night shift, weekends. There's also working it into the contract agreement that maybe we could have different shifts. So I can't remember what I named it, but oh goodness, too many thoughts going on in my head. I want to tell you everything all at once, and they're all trying to come out all at the same time. I'm too excited. So second shift, that's what I called second shift, and this I actually did a few times at a few different locations, where if the shift actually starts at 6, I have to come in at 7:30 because that's the earliest I can get there. So my shift is now 7:30 until whatever time
Whatever.
they
Yeah.
decide to close. If I can get an extra hour and a half that I lost in the morning, that's all great. But usually I didn't.
Yeah.
So now I'm an hour and a half less a day than everybody else, which affects my paycheck, which affects my life, which affects all of it. So a lot of times if I was working that Saturday, it wasn't really overtime for me.
Yeah. It
It was
was
just
just catch up.
making it
Yeah.
up to catch up and make it a 40-hour work week. But I always came in,
Yeah.
because,
But at least you had the
I needed to.
accommodation, because
Right.
we had that same thing at our last place where one of the younger guys had a couldn't drop off his kid till 7:30. And initially my boss above me was like, well, that's not going to work. And I was like, well, really, why not? Like,
Yeah.
well, the other guys are going to complain. Are they? Why would
Are
they? That's
they?
kind of like, it's kind of a, like, you got to be a real jerk to get out of bed and complain about that in the morning. Like,
Oh, people used to get mad at me. People used to get mad at me and say it was special treatment and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, I'm an hour and a half less a day per day of pay. You're not paying me starting at 6 to be an
Mhm.
hour and a half late. I don't get paid until 7:30. So, and I don't get to make up for that. So my Saturday that I'm missing half a day is actually straight time for me. So wait a minute before you start getting mad at me, right? Yeah, it's really funny, but things are changing. There's a shortage of skilled tradespeople. We don't want to lose people in the trade. And when I was doing some research for some other projects that I did about childcare, we find that a lot of people leave the trades, whether they're journeyman or apprentice, when they have a family.
Mhm.
That's when they leave because the hours just they can't do the hours that are required of them when they have small children. And that's a shame because a lot of people are really passionate about working in the trades and they
And
really
that's your
love it.
prime working years too.
And it's
And
good pay and it's
it is, and
benefits
it's
and all the
benefits,
things you
all that.
need,
Yeah. I say that to all
right?
the people that are young and getting into trades. I said, look, I had children young. Like, my ex-wife was a teenager when we had our first kid, and I have never paid a bill for my children in their life, because the trades was the best benefits plans you're ever going to have. I've worked for
Yes.
government, provincial and federally. I've worked for private. I've worked for now CWB. I've worked for colleges, and I have never had as good of benefits as when I was a welder.
Absolutely. I know that, and that's the shame, when you see people leaving the trades. And I talk to people about that too. Well, how am I going to manage with a little kid? Well, and I don't have family nearby. You shouldn't have to rely on your family. You really shouldn't. And I did, and you did, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people do, right? My mom helped me out a lot when I was still living in Medicine Hat, and then of course I leaned on his father. His father had my son every weekend, anyways, because he didn't even want to give my son back half the time. He just wanted to keep him, but he was a great dad, but is a great dad. Yeah, I got lucky that it actually worked out for me. But early on, I think the first job I went and did when I first put him into childcare, I didn't know my son had food allergies and stuff. So he started having these medical conditions because he's eating whatever they're serving. Then I started just bringing his lunch, and I didn't know he had a dairy allergy. I had no idea,
Mm-hmm.
right, before that. So I had to quit my job for that because they just were not, they were like, your kid's sick, don't bring them. And I understand that. But, you already have enough to deal with when you have kids. You
Yeah.
shouldn't have to have something as simple as childcare stand in your way for keeping your career
Well, and it's such a
going, right?
double whammy. Like, you're at home stressed out with your kid who's sick, and You're missing out on a full pay day of pay, which is not no big deal, right? So it all starts to stack up, and you start falling
Mhm.
into, and I've seen it happen. People start to fall into that despair of hopelessness,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to
Yeah.
get out of it. I see it in college all the time because college is a tough time for single moms. Tough time because you're not making even any money. So you got to take
Mhm.
these months off of your life to go get some training for a career you don't even have yet. And
Mhm.
like I remember the daycare at the college didn't open up till 7 in the morning, and one of the women was asking if she could come in early to practice, but she didn't know what to do with her kid. So I would hang out with the kid in the hallway
Good.
for an hour.
Awesome.
I would go in at 6 and
Ah.
hang out with and then a couple of the other moms found out, and so then I had my own little, you know, unofficial daycare. I'd start bringing candy to work. I'm like, okay, look, here's the deal. If I'm taking care of your kid, I'm loading them up with lollipops and bear paws because I don't care. I'm not like you're not getting any healthy meals out of me. So
You're like the honorary grandpa. You're
yeah,
loading them
yeah.
up with sugar and sending them on their way, right?
But it's just you
Oh.
just hate to see obstacles get in the way of
Yeah.
people's dreams. And when you said that there's those people that complain, they're complaining from a place of privilege. They're a
Yeah.
person who didn't have to
Mhm.
deal with what you dealt with, and
Yeah.
so they're just talking out their ass. Oh, you get special treatment. You got the
Mhm.
special treatment actually. Like they got the special
Actually.
treatment, but not ever
Yeah.
having to deal with any of this. That's the
Well,
special treatment. Like
yeah, and I had the female card thrown at me a few times, right? Well, what are you doing here? You don't belong here in the industry anyways. You should be at home with your kid. Oh, really? Do you really want to start having that conversation with me? Because I know a lot of people that have both parents that are struggling,
yeah.
right? So don't tell me just because I'm a female and I shouldn't be here, right? That's an old conversation, and whoever pitched that my way usually left with their tail between their legs, right? Don't even
well,
start that with me.
well, that's an interesting concept because I've had a lot of wonderful guests over the years, and I've had a lot of young women lately who have starting their careers, just getting rolling, and I love hearing the excitement and the the whole world is ahead of them in terms of their career, but
Mhm.
and I don't I think I'm older than you, but like old farts like us,
I'm
we're
older than you,
all
actually,
right.
but
Well,
anyways.
I look older than you. I was too much time in the sun, so you know. Um, we've seen a lot of
Yeah.
ugliness that I hope the trade has gotten better. Like for
Mhm.
myself, being an immigrant, being from another country has had some issues, but thankfully I speak really good English, which saves me from a lot of the abuse because usually language is an easy tip off for the jerks out there. But
Yeah.
for women, I've seen the abuse at work, and I've had to step in and be like, no, like what you're doing
Yeah.
is terrible. Oh, is she your girlfriend? Is like, no, this is just
Oh,
called being a
yeah.
decent human being. Now, from
Yeah.
your perspective, like that's just me as an ally. From your perspective,
Mm.
25 years in the trades, has it gotten better? Is it better? Is it a little better? Is it worse? Like I don't know.
Well, it really depends where you are. Every industry seems to be different. I see a big difference between industrial and commercial. I see differences between union and non. So I'm not going to target anybody at all because I
Hmm.
don't think that that's fair to do. I think it really boils down to the people and how they have maybe been raised or introduced to the trades, or I find it's kind of going back now, and I think it's probably because of the whole, how people face to face wouldn't say anything, but when they're hiding behind their computer screen, they
Hmm.
feel like they can say whatever they want. I feel like that's trickling onto job sites.
Yeah.
And I really, because I'm not a violent person, and a lot of people say, well, about smacking you if you're face to face. I don't buy that kind of stuff. But I think people are less willing to say things face to face. But now, like I said, it's coming out more because what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Well, I have a whole different array of ways to deal with it. I nip things in the bud right
Hmm.
away. If you're going to say something, even just a little thing, I'm going to turn around. I'm going to say, you know what, that's not very cool to say. That's not really very funny. Not cool. I'd appreciate it if I didn't hear that anywhere, around me or any of the women on site. Right now that I'm the mom on site,
Yeah.
usually when I'm on the tools, right? I look after everybody, not just the girls, but everybody, right?
Mhm.
I check in and I say, how are you doing? And if there's an issue, we have to follow procedure. If there's
Yeah,
somebody that's bugging you, you let your foreman know, right? You say, hey, you
that's
know what? I'm not tolerating this. And with
yeah,
me being union, we have, job stewards and we have other things that we can go through. But even on a non-union site, that shouldn't be any different. It shouldn't be any different between commercial and industrial. It should be, and it shouldn't matter what union or what trade you are. It should just be zero tolerance of any kind of discrimination against anybody, no matter what. New Canadian, woman in trades, any of it, even status, right? Like,
yeah.
a lot of people had an issue when I started carrying a radio down in Medicine Hat, right? How come she's carrying a radio? Because it's the people that don't know me, that don't know I've been in the trade for, 26, 27 years.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? I know what I'm talking about. I have been on this. You may have never seen me on this job site, but I was, I don't know, 29 the first time I set foot on that job site. I'm not 29 anymore, right? So I know my way around the plant site. I know where we can go and get tools and who to talk to. I actually, funny thing, a lot of people didn't know me when I stepped on that job site. And there's an apprentice that used to call me the mayor of Medicine Hat because everybody that would walk by would say, "Hey, Jill, I haven't seen you in a long time. How you doing?" Right? It's like, "Hey, oh my God," right? So, anyways, but back to the discrimination stuff. I like to think it's getting less, but it kind of rears its head every once in a while. We
Yeah.
need to show people we're not going to tolerate that. Maybe we need stricter policies. Like you lose a
You're
day's
off the
pay and
site.
you're
Yeah,
off site,
you're
or
yeah, yeah.
something.
That's what, that's where I go to is there's this concept now, especially with the job I have now that I'm really trying to push out, and it's something I'm talking about a lot, is work culture. It's something that we kind of gloss over a lot in terms of like, work is just work. You just go to work to make a dollar. But I don't believe that because you spend more work time at work than you do with your spouse. You spend more time at work than you do with your own
Absolutely.
pets. So it's an important part of your life. And like all parts of your life is a series of tapestries that makes a culture, the blanket of your life. And if you don't have a culture of respect at work, it's really going to screw up the other aspects of your life. It's
Oh
going to
yeah,
wreck other
yeah.
parts of your life. And I've had jobs where I would cry. I'd pull over on the way to work to cry. I hated the job so much, but I couldn't quit. I needed that
Yeah.
job to pay the bills. And I felt
Mhm.
trapped, and I know what that feels like. And I have privilege. I'm a healthy man. I have a lot of privilege, and I still had those feelings. So what's it
Mhm.
like for the people that have even more obstacles? So for
Yeah.
me, it's really a thing that needs to happen at the top. If a boss, like you said, what are the consequences? What's the chain
Mhm.
of command? If you go to your foreman and they say, "Oh, this is terrible," I'm going to the steward. Go to steward, and the steward says, "This is terrible." They go to the GF. The GF goes, "Man, give him another chance." It was all for nothing. It
Yeah.
was all for
Yeah.
nothing. There's
Yeah.
gotta be a follow through. And I tell you, I don't see a lot of companies, and and I hate to say this because it doesn't sound really positive, but I don't see a lot of companies where it's good culture right from the top to the bottom. There's always seems
Yeah.
to be one link somewhere where someone's gonna just have to throw in a bad apple, and say, "Oh, that's not a big deal," or "Who cares?" Well, it
Yeah.
is, like,
Yeah. There's been companies that I worked for that I didn't want the job to end because it was such a pleasure to be there.
hmm
And most of my jobs are temporary because shutdowns only are for so long, or
yeah,
like the project even I'm on right now is a short term, really year and a half or whatever it is total for me. Um, I think honestly, the only way we're going to get around that is to create policy and stick to it. I'm a big LinkedIn fan. That's kind of how I saw what you're doing
hmm
came about, other than seeing you all over the place in all the conferences and stuff. But also, I see a lot of things in there. I just saw one the other day, and I think it was, I don't know if what is his name? Uh, Blue is the New White. I am looking at his
Oh,
book.
Josh
I just looked
Solon.
over. Josh, yeah. So him and I did a podcast. We did the cross thing
Yeah, so did
a
we.
long time ago.
Me and him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he's so fantastic.
He's
He really,
awesome.
really
Yeah.
is. But I think it was a post of his where it says, in order to keep people, you need to create a structured culture. And I can't remember the whole thing that he was saying. And you need to stick to it. So I honestly, and that's the only way you're going to create a culture that people want to work for you and they
hmm
will stay working for you. But you have to stick with it. So I honestly think for companies, they have to create that policy and still follow through and be strict about it. Like, I'm sorry, but I gave you a warning and that was unacceptable. I gave you a day off, whatever your rule is, done, done. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. And I stick up for people. I always did. But now that I'm, the mom or whatever on site, one of the more senior people on sites, if I see a wrong, I'll walk right over there and I'll
Yeah.
say, you can't talk to that person that way. They are, whether it's a language barrier or whatever, just because they don't understand you doesn't mean you get to yell at them. Lower
Yeah.
your voice, calm down, or you and I are going to go for a walk. Like that's just the way I am. And I don't have to be screaming and yelling. And you calmly deal with the situation and de-escalate things. And it usually, works things out, right? There's a lot of different ways to deal with things. Calm and patience and
Yep.
peaceful
And
is the way to go,
and
right?
those jerks at work are not popular. It's not like they have a bunch of people rooting for them. Like, I mean, everyone else at work is like, finally somebody said something to the guy, like.
And when they're let go, it's almost like a hallelujah, right? It's
Yeah,
people are like,
yeah.
oh, so they're finally off site for good. And another thing I saw on LinkedIn just the other day is your company culture when if you feel sick, thinking about work on Monday morning, on Sunday night.
Mhm.
That is a good indication whether you have a good, healthy work culture or not. And I mean, we've all been in those positions where it's like, I'm not looking forward to going to work on Monday,
Yeah, this
right?
isn't
And
good.
that's too
Yeah.
bad. Yeah.
It is. It's a tough spot to be in, especially when you feel like you have no choice, which is a psychological thing because trust me, in the trades, people that are listening to this podcast, you always got a choice. You
Yes.
always
Yes.
have there's always a move for you. And trust,
Yeah.
and you're not going to go backwards. It doesn't happen. If you don't like your
Mhm.
job, start looking for another one. Just bounce. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it. You'll be okay.
Well, yes, absolutely, 110%. There's a lot of work out there, and tons and tons and tons. There's a shortage of tradespeople right now, so you
Hmm.
can go anywhere. And if you're Red Seal or you're apprentice, you can hop to another province even.
Hmm.
Explore the country. That's another benefit about being in the trades. But I really like the show of the support for mental health these days as well.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
only do we have benefits, but people could take a mental health day if you work for a good company. Just say, you know what, I'm stressed out about whatever family, whatever financial, whatever. It's
Or
usually
even
not
work.
financial.
Yeah.
Yeah, even work. You know what? I'm struggling, whatever. I need a day, a mental health day. Okay, take care. Call me if you need me.
Hmm.
I found way more kind and caring foremen, supervisors in the last like 8 years than I
Yeah.
had, the whole time I've been here. And I've worked for a lot of really good companies. I
Yeah,
gotta
well,
say.
and
Yeah.
to throw in my shameless plug because you got a couple, so I'm gonna throw in one here. Is
Yeah.
that the CWB Association? We offer free DEI courses once a month now. As a
Okay.
member, so you can go. We offer a 2-hour class for free, and we have stuff like allyship, microaggressions, how to handle aggression at work. We have stuff like even just upskilling, like help with math and word processing and Excel. These things. Like, what? If you're program it once a month. We offer these classes. Tell your boss you're taking a couple hours off in the afternoon to sit in front of the computer. You're learning something. It's relaxing, it's happy, and it's free, and it's good for you for your professional development. Because if you're learning, you feel better about yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And to have that constant, that's really good to always be having those courses coming up and all supportive of what you're doing and within the industry and all around. It's good for your own mental health to be taking those courses,
Hmm.
yeah. Because you do take that outside, like you mentioned earlier. If you're
Yeah.
having if you don't enjoy your work, you do take that elsewhere. And when I do talk to groups, about pitching the trades and joining the trades and considering a career in the trades, I say that if you have a happy job and you love what you do, your whole life is going to improve. Your whole
Hmm.
life, you're going to be happy when you leave the job site. You're going to be happy in the morning on your way to the job. You're going to be a better parent. You're going to be a better partner, sister, brother, all of it. You're going to be
Yeah.
just a generally better person all around. So find a trade. I always say find a trade that you're passionate about, right?
Like
Me, it's
welding.
welding.
Yeah.
Well, I like welding. It's the best trade that there is. I'm just saying. But, if you want to pick something else, that's okay, I guess, too. Right? Yes. No, I love welding. I've always been.
All
Anyways,
right. All
I'm
right.
all
So we're
over the
getting we're
place.
getting close to the end of the interview. Daniela always
Okay.
tries to keep me on track in under an hour. We blew past an hour a while ago. But
Okay.
but I did want to talk to you about a couple of the other things you got going on. So,
Okay.
we did talk about your podcast a little bit. So,
Okay.
Trailblazers, right?
Yes.
Or yes, Trailblazers. And is that still going? Is that something ongoing for you? How does it work? Who gets on there? Tell us about it.
Well, okay. So the reason I created Trailblazers Inc. was to share the stories of trailblazing tradeswomen in order to inspire others to join the trades. So again, all trades, not just the best welders, but all of the trades, right?
Hmm.
So that's where it started. COVID hit. I had different plans, but COVID hit, so I had to keep it to the podcast, and that ended up being a year and a half of doing that. And then of course I'm working all over the place, doing things, changing. Single mom life. It just gets crazy, right? Working full time plus doing podcasts. So I think I have about 24 podcasts right now. Yeah, and they're not all of just women. Like I said, I did one with Josh Zolan. I did one for International Women's Day. I did one to support the LGBTQ2 plus um, or
Community. Yeah.
community. Yes, thank you. I did one to honor my father when he passed away. I've done some different ones, right? So let's just say there's 20 women there, and I think it's really important to do video podcasts, especially for that, because they can see the woman, they can relate to maybe what she looks like, or her story, or her background, or her age, even, right? I've got older women, I've got younger women, I've got some apprentices. Most of them are experienced journey women, journey persons, journeymen, whatever you want to call it. I think that's really important to get the stories out there, because a lot of women don't think that they can do this, right? But they can. And I've got other plans for Trailblazers, right? So when this job wraps up, or maybe before this job wraps up, I'm working on some stuff, right? Maybe it's time for Trailblazers to expand a little bit. I had a whole lot of ideas in my head when I started it. They're all written down in a book. Anytime I have a new idea, it goes in that book. It's time to review the book and shake it up a little.
There's that entrepreneurial spirit of your grandfather in you there.
Oh, well, I've had two other businesses as well, right? But Trailblazers, if I can do a little plug, my podcasts are on YouTube. So Trailblazers Inc. on YouTube. I'm also on Spotify.
Okay.
Oh goodness, my head is just trying to tell you too many things at once. There's another one that I can't remember, but yes, they're out there. And I have a website, trailblazersinc.ca.
Okay, well, I mean, a quick Google, and I'm sure people can find it. We'll also likely share all this information on the podcast right up when we put it up online. So now, to finish off the last couple questions before we wrap up, what's coming up? You got a year and a bit left of this program that you're working on now. What's coming up
Yeah.
for you outside of that? Is there conferences? Is there anything you're promoting? Anything we should know about? Anything with the UA
Well,
that's cool?
we've got some conferences coming up. Nothing that the public can be invited to. Building Trades of Alberta conference is coming. UA conference. CBTU has an annual conference, obviously, right? Anybody involved with CBTU is aware of that. We just had ours. Was it May? It wasn't that long ago, May or June. But for me personally, I don't really know. Nobody really knows what my next steps are. I've got a lot to choose from for me personally. When this project is over, I might go back into being an instructor. I've been an instructor off and on, since I don't know, 2005. It just depends on what's going on, right? I
Hmm.
really do enjoy that for the same reasons you said before. I have my level 2 weld inspection and I've never really done it.
Hmm.
So that is really interesting to me. My grandpa was a welding inspector. So I kind of, there's that kind of draw. I don't know. Starting the business. Yeah, I've got a few things cooking that I don't want to mention until they come out, but I'll let you
Yeah.
know. I'll let you know.
Well,
I'm
I'm
too
sure.
busy. I'm way
I'm
too
sh-
busy.
I'm sure I'll run into you somewhere and we'll talk about it. I'll get
Yeah,
I'll get I'll
exactly.
get the spicy meatballs out of you somehow. I'll figure it out. Yeah.
I'll walk around with 10 different business cards from what it'll be like a playing poker. Here, these are all my 5 cards for what I'm doing. Take one.
or
Take
just
all of
one
them.
big business card with all the
Yeah, yeah.
And okay, so let's see how are we going to wrap this up. Let's talk a little bit about in terms of, you know, um what you see. I would like for you to kind of give me the rundown for how does somebody get involved? You're such a proponent of getting in the trades. What are the first steps someone should take? And I'm talking generic someone. I don't care if you're 18 just out of high school or you're 35 and you've been working in the bank for the last 15 years and you want to try something new. What are the first
Y-
steps someone could take?
Well, I mean, it depends on where you're starting out. There's so many courses that are introduction to trades courses,
Hmm.
at state, at all kinds of different places. Like I'm speaking Calgary zone.
Yep.
Even, Medicine Hat has introduction to trade stuff. where I'm from, where I grew up. Look for that, or maybe even just pick a trade that you think you'll be interested in. Like if it's carpentry, maybe go and hit up some contractors and see if they'll take you on, just so you can try it for a few months, right? That would be a really good place to start. Because there's a shortage of skilled tradespeople, there's a really good chance that would even work, right? But be prepared. You're going to have to pay for, your steel toe boots and your basics, right? Usually companies supply your safety stuff, usually. Yeah, if you can try it in high school, by all means, that's probably the best place. And I think they're very supportive and they're pushing it a little bit more now. I know my son's school where we live now had carpentry and welding and auto body and like all of it. It was insane. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Even if you have a friend, right? If you have a friend or a neighbor that is doing something that you're interested in, strangely enough, my next door neighbor is always welding in the garage, and it's like, hey man, I'm in the office today. I don't need to hear your grinder all day long. But if you do have a neighbor that is in mechanics or carpentry or doing something in the garage, invite yourself over, introduce themselves, and maybe just watch for a while and see if it is something that you like. There's so many ways to get in. I mean, and obviously I'm going to pitch the union as well. Call a union. If you think you like welding, there's like Boilermakers, Ironworkers, and UA. If you're into carpentry, there's all different kinds of carpentry you can do. You can do finished carpentry. You could build houses. You could be a scaffolder even, which is, kind of involved in that. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you want to do. And sometimes you get into one trade and you don't like it. There's like segues, right? Like plumbing and pipe fitting are good partners because the first 3 years is all the same training is what they're telling me in the apprenticeship, right? It's like the piping basics, right? And not to say my dad didn't love welding. He totally loved welding, but he also got 2 tickets. He was a pipe fitter, steam fitter as well. So you can get dual tickets, right? And then, when you're not doing one, you can do the other, right? There's a lot of industries that kind of work well together.
Yeah, like I
Right.
mean, I know a lot of pipe fitters that are red seal welders separately, and then they're red seal pipe fitters, and same with the iron workers. And I have dual ticketed as well. I made the jump from welding to steel fab, and
Perfect. Yeah.
it's very useful. And like I mean, the other thing I would like to just add to your list is social media. You brought up LinkedIn. Get out there, get on social medias, any of them, whether it's LinkedIn, which is a kind of more professional level, which or even just the Instagrams, and check it out. There's so much you could see out there. YouTube, listen to
Oh,
podcasts, right? Like do
yeah.
do a little bit, and if you're listening to someone's stories and it's exciting to you or interesting, then odds are you're probably gonna dig it. You know what I mean?
hmm hmm Well, and YouTube is huge because when I was teaching during our lunch break, if we were staying in for lunch, I put like underwater welding on YouTube and things that I'm not going to be able to teach them.
Hmm.
Let's check out welding in space, which is pretty trippy. If you haven't checked it out, check it
Yeah,
out because
yeah.
it welds on its own. Wow, I didn't know that happened. But yeah, there's so many different places that you can learn. But the last place I saw you is another thing that people can check out. In each province has a Skills Alberta event. If you're anywhere
Hmm.
near a Skills Alberta event, which happens once a year, check it out because there's a lot of try trades, right? You
It's
can
fun.
try,
Yeah.
carpentry, try welding, which is usually, not actual welding. It's usually,
Simulator.
virtual
Yeah.
welding simulator. Yeah. But you get to watch and see the competitors competing, which is pretty inspiring because they are focused and they're driven and they're doing their best. And then you can smell it. That's what I like about being there.
Yeah.
I can smell you cutting the wood. I can smell, the, auto body stuff, and I can smell the grease and see, that's what gets me revved up about the trades, right? Is the smelling and the experiencing of it all, feeling the heat from the welders, right? But I mean, you and I last saw each other at Skills Canada, which moves around
Hmm.
every year, right? That's the national competition for those who don't know. And yeah, if you can find that as well, that's even better yet.
It's like
But
the Olympics of trades. It's very exciting.
yeah, and some people have open houses, right? Like, it depends. You have to really
Hmm.
explore. You have to
Yeah.
explore your regions.
There's a
But
lot of
yeah,
options. Yeah.
it's the best thing I ever did was joining the trades. I definitely am the right fit for this because I really don't like wearing makeup. I really prefer not to do my hair and just put a hat on and go to work. But things have changed. This is easier on my body, to be honest, as well. But yeah, it's such a great thing to do, no matter what trade. Of course, welding is
Yeah.
we're going to boast about. But yeah, any of the trades honestly is the best thing to do. And the schooling is minimal. That was my advantage. 2 months
Yeah.
a year for
And
2 to
usually
3,
paid for.
3, 4 years. Yes,
Yeah.
usually.
Even
Yeah.
even non-union right now, most courses there's tons of bursaries and scholarships and money for it. Like you'd be
Well,
amazed.
yeah, and you can be on EI while you're
Yep.
in school, right? You're
Absolutely.
on
Yep.
EI, and sometimes your company and some unions,
We'll
I don't
top you
think
up.
mine
Yeah.
does. Well, and they'll pay for your tuition.
Yeah.
Like some companies, because they support what you do and they want you to come back when you're done school, they'll pay your tuition, which I don't even know. I think it was free when I was in school 150 years ago. I don't know about you. I don't remember paying any tuition at all.
I don't
honestly
remember, to tell you the truth.
I don't
either.
remember paying tuition. I remember being on EI and paying for books.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
Right?
All right, Jill. Last question. We're gonna do
Okay.
the time. We're gonna do the time machine. All right. If you
Okay.
could get in a time machine right now, knowing everything you know, and pop up in front of 18-year-old Jill just coming out of high school, doesn't like school, hated being there, so happy she got the out of there. You know,
Yeah.
what advice would you give yourself knowing what you know now?
I'd say get into welding immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately. That is one of my only regrets when people ask, go through a list of questions and say, what is your only regret? Is not starting earlier. I would say get your butt in there, forget about partying and boys and whatever's on your mind. Get your butt to a welding shop because you're going to love it. You're going to be so proud of yourself, right?
Mhm.
That's a big thing for me. Yeah. That's what I would say to myself. Yep. And buy a house early, right?
I waited
Because when
forever
you're
too.
yeah, buy a
Yeah.
house early. People don't realize, and I don't boast about I don't want people to come into the trades for the wage, but it is a big part. You're going to be
Mhm.
making good money early. You won't struggle financially as much. That I'd be yelling that to Jill right in her face. You won't be financially strapped as long as you are.
Well, one of
Word.
the things that the World Health Organization has said is one of the biggest issues for women in the world is financial stability. Less pension, less work time, less hours in, less wages, wage disparity. And I can't stress enough how, the trades, there really isn't, and maybe this is something that good since forever, but a welder is a welder. The pay is the pay, and it's
Yep.
never been whether it's a female or male or black or white or brown or yellow or purple.
Yep.
The wage is the wage. It's been about getting hired or not. Yes, that's been the issue, but but the wage is the wage. So if you're a woman or a person of color, you just get in there and you will be paid the same as the other people around you. I mean, I haven't heard of any company getting away with paying women less in welding ever.
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to say the union again because it goes by the
Hmm.
book.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. You're right. Welding is a good wage. I've actually seen some charts. I think on LinkedIn again. Maybe I'm a LinkedIn addict. I don't know. But where they say like a welding like journeyman rate right now is $35 or $32, way higher than that right now. B pressure welders in Alberta are getting average $50 an hour. Average,
Yeah,
right? Some more, some less.
the east of Canada, so from Manitoba east, the wages are considerably lower. That's what I
Are
always tell
they?
people. Yeah, so the west we get
Okay.
paid way more, and we're used to it. So I was making almost $40 an hour 20 years ago. So it's like we're like, oh, in Ontario, that's like I mean, I think in Regina, the lowest wage for year one I saw posted like just out of level one, I think it's 24, $25 an hour. That's like, and I think, and the unions are higher. I believe it's low 30s for level one. So it's like not too far apart, but it's pretty high. And then I have friends from Ontario that's saying, there's red seals out there that I'm not going to throw a number out there, but less. So they throw
Yes.
the stats off. So if
Really?
you come out west,
Come out west. West is where it
west
rules
is
out
where it
here.
is. Yeah,
Western welders from Alberta,
yeah.
most especially, or Saskatchewan,
Come on, throw a little love to Saskatchewan here.
Yes, you
uh,
guys are cool too. All good.
all right, Joe. Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast. This has been a ton of
Yes,
fun. This has been a great conversation.
a great conversation. Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time and allowing me to share my story.
Cool. Any shout outs or anything you'd like to say? Last words?
Oh man, I think I've had enough words.
All
I
right.
think it's time to. I've been shouting enough. Shouting enough.
All right, people. Well, everyone that's been watching, thank you very much for staying with us for this hour and a half that we did. It's been a really fun. Check out trailblazersinc.ca and also make sure that you check out Jill on LinkedIn because she's probably going to be online at any time of the day. So you can find her on there. And
I'll be there.
and if you've been following and downloading the podcast, thank you so much for following. We are getting prepped for a whole bunch of fun projects coming up. We just released our Skills Canada project where we did 15 interviews over 2 months with all sorts of skills competitors from across Canada. Those are out now being released, and we got lots coming up. So keep downloading, sharing, and commenting on our podcast. We love the interactions, and we'll be seeing you. So stay tuned.
We hope you enjoyed the show.